Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Caitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yutapada Kamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vidham Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Harijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Bhalita Shri Vishakhamritamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sudevi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyeva Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatyadeshatarine Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Namine Shri Varshavani Devi Daithaya Kripabdaye Krishna Sambandha Vijnana Daine Prabhave Namaha Madhuryo Jvala Premadya Shri Rupanupa Bhaktida Shri Gora Karana Shakti Vigrahaya Namostute Namaste Gauravani Shri Murtaye Dinatarine Rupanuga Virodhapa Siddhanta Dvantaharine Namo Gaura Kishoraya Sakshat Vairagya Murtaye Vipralambara Sambodhe Padambujayate Namaha Namo Bhakti Vinoda Satchitananda Namine Gaura Shakti Svarupaya Rupanugavarayate Gauravir Bhavavam Nistvam Nirdishta Sajana Priya Vaishnava Sarvabhauma Shri Jagannatha Namaha Pradeshimam Vachimam Prasuptam Sanjivayate Kila Shakti Darasvanamna Anyam Shasta Charana Shravana Tvagadim Pranandamo Bhagavate Purushaya. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
I'm very happy to be with you this morning, and we will discuss a little tiny speck of the glories of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur on the occasion of his appearance. His appearance day is on the 13th day or Trayodashi Shukla Paksha of the month of Bhadra. Bhadra is a very auspicious and holy month of the year, and immediately after Vamana Dvadashi, Kedranath Datta, known to all the Gaudiya Vaishnavas as Bhaktivinoda Thakur, made his appearance in Ulagram. And he became a great Acharya. And first, before speaking a little bit about him, I wanted to speak of what is Parampara. This is a very important institution in Vedic tradition. Literally, the word Parampara means from one to another. And it's taking its name from the guru-disciple relationship, which has always been very personal. It's a great difference between modern education, modern approach to education, and the traditional Vedic approach to education, because as the time progresses, the education becomes more and more impersonal. Nowadays, it's more or less online education. It's mostly online, 90% online. So you don't need personal interaction, and basically, what is education nowadays? Nowadays, education is receiving the information. And of course, if you reduce the education to this process of receiving information, you don't need personal relationship. As Kali Yuga progresses, the personal component of life reduces more and more and more. Like before, people were driving horses, and horses were personalities with their character, with their special features, and so on. Now it's just car. Cars, maybe on some level also personalities, but the personality aspect is greatly reduced in comparison to horses. So, and it's easier to deal with the impersonal sort of devices and mechanisms, because they're not displaying any personal features, and therefore they're just obedient to your command. This element of reducing the personality is basically proportionately our propensity to lord it over material nature is increasing. It's very much in sync with one another. We want to more or less be in command. We want to command everything. We want to control everything. And we cannot really control persons because they're persons, they're free. We cannot control, but the only way to control them is to control them by love. And that's the only way to really establish deep personal relationship. But if you want to control or exploit somebody, then it's better to deal with the mechanisms or reduce the human being to the level of the mechanism. And that's why we have this completely impersonal education now, because again, in the process of education, from the Vedic perspective, the personal development should take place. But if you're just receiving the data, the information, there is no personal development. It's a completely mechanical process which is taking place. And therefore, the very word parampara implies this personal relationship from one to another, where the knowledge, which is modern information, the knowledge in Vedic sense, the very word, Sanskrit word gyan, means experience. It's not really information, because information is a very reduced form of knowledge. But in parampara, the experience is being transferred from guru to the disciple. And basically, there are three things which are being received in the parampara system. When we study from the guru, we should definitely get some information, some knowledge. Knowledge in an ordinary sense of this word, or in the common sense of this word. We receive some information, we receive some understanding. Of course, it's, again, modern information as such, because it gives you the complete picture on the world view, the lens through which you see the world. That's one thing. But then you get the experience. When you directly deal with the person, you get more than information just by seeing him. Just by seeing how he speaks, how he walks, how he talks, how he sits, as Arjuna says, you receive something more imperceptibly. There is a subtle mechanism in our brain which is called mirror neurons. And these mirror neurons, they start assembling in a certain way when you just observe the person. And therefore, it is still, even in the modern education, when it comes to the practical science, like surgery, you cannot just learn surgery online, you know. You cannot become a certified surgeon just by getting some online courses. It doesn't work like this. It's, you know, you may become a certified murderer by learning surgery online, but not certified surgeon. So that's another thing which you receive. You receive, you know, you get some practical skills when you have personal interaction with your guru, with your teacher, with your professor, whatever you call him. But then there is even more subtle element of this whole parampara system, which is called mood or bhava, the emotion. And that you absolutely cannot get through the impersonal media. To receive this, because especially when it comes to bhakti, what is bhakti? Bhakti is elevated emotions. And in the process of education, we should learn this emotion. And only then the education will be complete. Because education means there is a special formation of your personality. And your personality is being changed in the process of education. And this process, has these aspects. You have to receive the new information, but you also have to receive skills, and you have to receive different emotions. You only actually can be called and have a right to be called a different person if you experience different emotions. If you experience the same old emotions which you received from your parents or whatever, from your social conditioning, then you're not the new person. And actually, in fact, every human being is hankering for these new emotions, for the new experiences, and primarily the emotional experiences. That's the very essential part of our life journey in this world. And therefore, the Parampara system is complete in this sense, because through the Parampara system you get this well-rounded education, not just very superficial education which we receive in the modern world, when we're just more or less trying to extract the information from the knowledgeable person. And why am I talking about this? Because, of course, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur is a member of our Parampara. And while meditating on him, we definitely have to meditate on these different aspects of his personality and learn from him. Learn his mood, the information which he gave, and the skills which he also taught or transferred to his disciples. Of course, we cannot do it directly, but still, to a certain extent, while meditating on his personality, we can adopt to a certain extent his whatever he has come to give to us. And it is also in our pranam mantras. The pranam mantra encapsulates what this personality has come to give. Like, for example, Gaura Das Babaji Maharaja's pranam mantra, Vipralambara Sambodhe Padam Bhujayate Namaha. He is the personification of this Vipralambara rasa, of this mood of separation. And while meditating on him, it's one thing, again, just to learn some facts about biographical facts about some person. But these biographical facts or data are only as valuable as they convey to us a certain message. And ultimately, the emotional message, what this personality has come to give to us. And Nama Bhakti Vinodaya Sachitananda Namine Gora Shakti Swarupaya Rupanugavaraya Te. We are worshipping this Rupanugavara, the best of the Rupanugas, the followers of Srila Rupa Goswami. Why? Because he was endowed with this Gaura Shakti Swarup. He is the embodiment or the divine manifestation of the Shakti of Gauranga Mahaprabhu. And what is Shakti of Gauranga Mahaprabhu? His Shakti is the Shakti of love. He brought this in this world, this hladini Shakti, and he learned or he taught us how to receive this hladini Shakti in our life and get the complete transformation. Hladini Shakti is the Shakti or the energy of enjoyment and ultimately the energy of love, because the highest enjoyment in this world is the enjoyment of love, if the bliss or ananda of love. And Caitanya Mahaprabhu, his teachings, which Bhaktivinoda Thakur and our whole Gaudiya Vaishnava Parampara is trying to give to the world, is teaching how to receive this love which is there, and how to become the true lover of God. So that's something about what we have to get while trying to meditate in Bhaktivinoda Thakur or on Bhaktivinoda Thakur life. And little more interesting detail about Bhaktivinoda Thakur's contribution, which of course we all know is his books. Tremendous amount of books which he wrote. It's at one point of his life, he made this prediction. He said, and we are all the result of this prediction. He said that Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu has come to this world not for a few Indians, not to elevate few Indians to this level of complete, overwhelming love of God. He came to the whole world, and that was his mission. His mission is to spread the message of Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu to the whole world, and he said, when this day will come when the Germans and British and Americans and Russians will come together and will chant Jai Sachinandana, Jai Sachinandana, Jai Sachinandana. So this world has come. Indians and Germans and Americans and Russians, I'm Russian, you're American. So we're all sitting together and saying Jai Sachinandana, Jai Sachinandana. That was his prediction. But it's actually very interesting that in his books, if we take and if we look objectively in Bhaktivinoda Thakur's books, we will see one very amazing feature which has something to do with this mission. He definitely wants to spread this teaching of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu all over the world, and therefore he wrote books, specifically Sri Chaitanya Shikshamritam, which is very suitable for the Western mentality. He wrote it in a very completely logical way, so logical that it's sometimes painful. Sometimes you just feel like I need a little less logic. So he created this very amazing book, which is more or less encyclopedia of the whole Vedic culture. In a very logical way, whereas when we look in other creation of previous acharyas, usually they're not so logical, or you really have to endeavor to discover, to dig out this logic. If you take any book, any classical book on astrology, for example, or any other subject matter, you will see a complete mess. Information which is given in a very illogical way. Even if we take Caitanya Charitamrita is supposed to be a very structured information on the life of Lord Chaitanya. But Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, sometimes he goes somewhere, and describes this event, and then he says, later I will describe it in more details, and then when it comes later, he doesn't describe it in more details. He describes it in less details, and it's... No, but there is a purpose behind it. There is a purpose behind it because actually, usually, normally, of course, when it gets to Srila Jiva Goswami's writing, it's also very logical. But and even there, sometimes it may not be so logical. But the purpose behind it, why these books are written in such a way, is more or less to discourage the student to study it on his own. These books are supposed to be studied under the under the teacher. And the teacher will discover or will make this job for you. He will discover or undig this logic which is there. Ultimately, we do have to understand logic of the scriptures. Srila Rupa Goswami says that you will get the greater adhikar for bhakti when you understand the logic of the scripture, because when you understand scriptural logic, which is not the linear logic, and that's another feature of it. Scriptural logic is not the linear logic which we are used to. It's a different kind of logic, sometimes very unusual logic. But when you get the understanding of this sort of logic, you become Shastra Yukti Sunipun. Sunipun means you become very, very expert in this logic. Then your faith will become very strong. But Bhaktivinoda Thakur, knowing the Western mentality, catering for the Western mentality, he wrote his books in a very logical way, allowing us to a certain extent to understand them on our own. Because again, he knew when the teaching of Lord Caitanya Mahaprabhu will spread all over the place, all over the world, inevitably, there will be a lack of qualified teachers or whatever. In any case, he knew that we have the tendency of studying the books on our own. Therefore, he wrote the books in such a way that we could get something from them and study them and understand them in this way. But again, having said this, I just want to stress this point that we cannot really learn the mood of a person just by reading the book. It requires more, and it's a much more subtle thing which is being transferred through this educational system of this Parampara institution which is there. When shall I finish? 8:30. 8:30. Okay. Anyway, coming back to our subject matter of Bhaktivinoda Thakur's life, he was born in 1838 in middle of 19th century or in the beginning of 19th century, depending how you look at it. And one, of course, very interesting feature of his life is that, which has something to do with his mission, he has become a Vaishnava at a rather mature age. Actually, his grandfather, who was a great devotee of the Lord, maternal grandfather, who was a great devotee of the Lord, who lived in a place called Choti in Arissa. He was very old, and at one point he was a great yogi and great astrologer. And when Bhaktivinoda Thakur was at the age of 20, his grandfather wrote to him a letter, and he said, "You please come here as soon as possible personally. I need to convey something very important to you, but my days are over. I will not live here for a long time, so please come as soon as possible." And Bhaktivinoda Thakur came with his family to this village, Ulagram, to this village where his maternal grandfather was living. And he saw a completely hale and healthy person, very, strong. He himself met him, it's not that he was sick. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur had a little doubt, what's happening? He's saying that in a few days he will leave the body. And his grandfather said, "Yes, I only have 3 days to live." He knew exactly the time and the date when he is leaving his body. And he says, I do have a very important message to you. Please listen to me carefully. And he said, just when I leave the body, just stay for a few days, do the rituals which you're supposed to do, and leave, because you will become a great Vaishnava. And I bless you to become the great Vaishnava. He was a great Vaishnava. He was chanting all day long. He was sitting with his beads and chanting the holy name the whole day long. And he said, the indication what you will do in the whole life will come to you when you will be 27. At that time, Bhaktivinoda Thakur was only 20. And whatever you will do at the age of 27, you will do the rest of your life. So he not only predicted that he will become a great Vaishnava, but he also gave to him the indication what will be his life's mission. And it so happened that, as I said, the peculiar feature of Bhaktivinoda Thakur's life is that he became a devotee rather late he was not so young. And before that, he was not following all the regulative principles. He was eating fish. He was not vegetarian. Moreover, he writes himself that in his autobiography that I was attached to non-vegetarian things. I was attached to this food. And he said, only when I got initiation at that time, immediately, somehow or other, this attachment was gone. In any case, it's just, we have to consider this as his lila, as his play, which brings him closer to us. When we hear about some person who just, few minutes back was in the spiritual world and he descended here to give us some teaching, it may be, it may be good, but it really does not make him relevant to us. But Bhaktivinoda Thakur's life, his teaching, is very relevant to us because he didn't become a devotee from his childhood, and moreover, he had severe doubts. Another feature of his life is that in the beginning he was very much interested into Christianity, and so much so that he even thought that Christianity is the higher religion than the Vedic religion, that it teaches more pure moral values than Vedic religion. Sounds familiar, isn't it? Sometimes we may have this sort of understanding while reading books, about some weird episodes of Vedic history, and and here is the figure of Jesus Christ, who is so pure and so compassionate. And so Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he went through this phase in his life, and he was deeply studying the teachings of Jesus Christ. But when he was 27, coming back to the prediction which was given by his maternal grandfather, and his maternal grandfather, when he pronounced this prediction, he said, please, I bless you, you will become a great devotee and you will do something really great in this life. At that moment, the life air burst from his skull. From the top of his skull, and the manner as yogis live this body. And that was basically his last words in this world. He left this body in a very spectacular manner, and Bhaktivinoda Thakur was the witness of it. And in the age of 27, according to this prediction, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he developed some interest about Lord Chaitanya, and he said it took him a few years to find a copy of Chaitanya Charitamrita. And he started reading Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita at the age of 27. And he writes himself that by reading Chaitanya Charitamrita for the first time, he developed some attraction to the figure of Lord Chaitanya. And as I said, the figure of Lord Chaitanya was competing in his heart with the figure of Jesus Christ. He was quite deeply, enamored by Christian philosophy or whatever. But he gained appreciation of the purity of character of Lord Chaitanya. Lord Chaitanya was, of course, a great saint, and he says, but that was the only thing which I gained from first reading of Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. He writes, then after the second reading of Chaitanya Charitamrita, I appreciated the philosophy of Lord Chaitanya. I appreciated that he was the greatest Pandit, and there must be something in his philosophy. He said, still, I couldn't cope with the idea that this Caitanya Mahaprabhu, who is so pure and so saintly, is worshipping Lord Krishna, who is a debauchee, who is a complete, who is a cheater, who is, who transgresses all kinds of moral rules. There was no moral rules which he would not transgress. starting from his childhood, he's a thief, he's a debauchee. And he said, I couldn't understand this. He said, I started reading Chaitanya Charitamrita for the third time. And he said, when I read Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita for the third time, I developed a strong attachment. The truth revealed to me. It is actually said that to understand something, even Lord Brahma, it is said in Srimad Bhagavatam that he studied Vedic literature 3 times. You need to study Vedic literature 3 times to really understand what's going on there. And that's what Bhaktivinoda Thakur did. And since that time, he said, when I read Chaitanya Charitamrita for the third time, I developed anurag, very strong attachment to Lord Chaitanya and his teachings. And basically, that was the time when he dedicated his whole life to spreading the teachings of Lord Chaitanya, because he was so completely impressed by these teachings. And he actually understood that that is the solution to all the problems of humanity. So ever since he started studying the literature of Chaitanya Sampradaya, not only Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, he went to Puri, he became the magistrate in Puri, and superintendent of Sri Jagannath Temple. But for many hours a day, he would study the scriptures of Gaudiya Vaishnava. He studied all Sandarbhas of Srila Jiva Goswami. He studied Nyaya, the Nyaya school logic. And he studied Sanskrit. He studied Sanskrit before, but he wanted to master Sanskrit, to write the poetry in Sanskrit. So he mastered Sanskrit at that time. But at the same time, he was non-vegetarian. He was still in Jagannath Puri. He was holding the discourses on the philosophy of Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu in Bhakti Mandap. He writes himself that many Mayavadis, sannyasis, would become devotees just by listening to his discourses. And he was not initiated at that time yet. He said that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu hasn't sent to me my guru yet at that point of my life. So he was already preaching the message of Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu and converting other people into the creed of Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu, but he himself was not even initiated. So much so that one Siddha Mahatma, Vaishnav, Raghunath Das Babaji, who was living at that time, he started propaganda against Bhaktivinoda Thakur. He started spreading propaganda. He said, why are you going and listen to his preaching and his discourses? This person never has tilak and doesn't have neck beads even. How you can get something worthwhile from listening to this person if he doesn't have neck beads and doesn't have tilak? And he started talking with other Vaishnavas, saying, don't go to his lectures. He is not bona fide. And what happened to him, he became very sick all of a sudden. And Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself came it was Lord Jagannath, I think, either one of them. So somebody came to him in his dream and he said, you go and beg forgiveness from Kedarnath Datta, who was not Bhaktivinoda Thakur at that time, was still Kedarnath Datta, because he is Siddha Mahatma. So this Babaji, I know, I'm already finished.
We can go a little longer.
Siddha Mahatma came to Bhaktivinoda Thakur, who became all of a sudden very sick. He bowed down to him, paid his obeisances, and started begging forgiveness. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur was completely shocked. He said, why are you doing this? He said, why I'm doing this? Because Jagannath told me to do this. That's why I'm doing this. And then Bhaktivinoda Thakur said, yes, how can I wear neck beads and tilak? Because this is the sign of initiation, because I'm not initiated yet. That's why I don't belong to Parampara. But this is just to give you an example how powerful he was. Even though he was not yet initiated, but still he was converting Mayavadis, which is probably the most difficult task in the creation, to convert a Mayavadi, because Mayavadi has such a beautiful philosophy that it's all one, so you don't need to become anything else because you're already everything. So he was somehow rather converting all these hardcore Mayavadis to Vaishnavas without being initiated. And of course, in Jagannath Puri, he manifested the complete, total discipline. His son Lalita Prasad describes his schedule. He would sleep only 2.5 hours a day. He would go to bed at 7:30, sometimes 8 o'clock. He would wake up around 10 o'clock. And from 10 to 4 or 4:30, he would write his books or study. For 6 hours at night, when everyone was asleep, he would write his books. And then from 4 o'clock till 7 o'clock, he would chant his mantra. He was meditating on japa, chanting this. And after that, he would answer his emails. It's almost unbelievable. There was no emails at that time. He was answering his letters. It took him 1 hour, so he had a lot of emails, every one of us. And then he would meet people, and then he would go to his court, and usually, any other judge would deal with the case for half an hour or more. Bhaktivinoda Thakur usually was done after 5 minutes. He would hear the case 5 minutes and 2 more minutes to write the judgment, and he was done. He would hear 40 to 50 cases every day while he was a magistrate, and all the other judges became completely envious to him because he was so productive. If Indian legal system would follow his example, God knows what would happen, because usually it takes ages to make the judgment. And of course, the most glorious, there are few glorious events which took place there in Puri. One is that he punished the king. The king was a debauchee. King actually, at that time, Maharaja Divya Singh, he was a drunkard. He was an adopted son of the previous king who made him heir apparent, and he became the king. And because his adopted mother didn't like him, he became completely degraded, and he started drinking. And because he was in charge of the affairs of the temple, he misspent 80,000 rupees on his, enjoyments from the temple. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur, who was appointed from the British administration to oversee the affairs of the temple, he fined the king without looking at who he is, and he said, from now on, for 1 year, you will have to sponsor 52 offerings of 52 dishes to Lord Jagannath. And the king's treasury was very soon practically exhausted, and he became so angry at Bhaktivinoda Thakur that he hired some tantrics. He spent his last money to hire tantrics. And the tantrics in his inner quarters started making some terrible yagya against Bhaktivinoda Thakur. And they told the king that when the last oblation will be poured in the fire of this yagya, Bhaktivinoda Thakur Kedaranath Datta at that time will be dead. No way he will live. So, and Kedaranath Datta Bhaktivinoda Thakur became sick at that time. And they were pouring this mantra for a few days, I think 18 days or something like this. There was a long yagya, they were doing this, they were pouring ghee and chanting terrible mantras and doing all kinds of black magic. And when the last oblation was poured into the fire of the yagya, son of the king died. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur became completely healthy because Lord Jagannath, he directed the black magic of the king towards the king himself. And he came and he begged forgiveness for Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Anyway, so there is no point of going longer because I will not, it's just basically coming back to the beginning of the lecture when I said that we should learn the mood of Bhaktivinoda Thakur while meditating on his life. Definitely his mood is to give the teaching of Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu to everyone in this world. And not only the teaching, not only again the data, the information, but basically to give the love. And he himself, can I spend a few more minutes? Two more minutes.
Anyone needs to go.
I have a question, so please save time.
Oh, okay, just 2 more minutes. This last thing which I will say. So he made some changes in our Siddhanta, there's no doubt about it. and still, some of the Vaishnavas of Gaudiya Sampradaya who belong to other groups, they have problems with Bhaktivinoda Thakur's teachings. Some of the changes in Siddhanta are quite significant. I definitely don't have time to get into this philosophical controversies about the changes which he has made. But we really have to understand that whatever changes he has made with only one purpose: to make the teachings of Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu accessible to the Western people, and to provide the basis or the foundation for the worldwide movement. He knew that some of the things, of some of the ideas even, which are there in the original writings, need to be adjusted to make the teachings of Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu accessible to the people of the Western world. And he wanted to give us the teachings in its entirety. It basically means to give the emotional component of this teaching. And he himself, he wrote a very interesting thing in the very end of Jaiva Dharma, his masterpiece of this logical exposition of the teachings of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is Jaiva Dharma. And in the very end, he describes very beautifully how rasa can appear within our heart. What are the conditions which have to be in place so that we will receive rasa? And he says that the main condition, it starts from hearing. Shravana Dasha is the first period, and he says that Shravana Dasha needs to be Antarmukha Shravan Dasha when you really absorbed in Shravan. When you just occasionally hear scriptures or stories about Lord Krishna, Harikatha, or whatever, this occasional hearing will not work. Well, it will work, but it will only give you some bhakti unmukhi sukriti, some pious credits which will help you to build the foundation for your faith. But it will not even give you the Shastriya Shraddha, the real spiritual Shraddha. It will only give you some, at best, some conventional Shraddha, some Lokik Shraddha. But then he says, when you get this Shraddha, the faith, then your hearing should be antarmukh, and that's the sign of real Shraddha. The sign of real Shraddha is that you have ardent desire to hear about Krishna more and more and more. And when this desire is there, when this desire for hearing is there, then the teacher's or guru's heart will open to you, and he will disclose to you the secrets. But then he also says that this hearing should be Kramashuddha hearing. He said that there are two ways of hearing. Even if you're absorbed in hearing, still the hearing, he says, can be Kramahina, means without particular order, without proper sequence. Kramahina means without proper sequence. You hear from here, and you hear from there, and you hear from somewhere else, and you get a complete mess in your head, and you don't know what to do, and nothing really works, and you don't get this emotional experience which you're supposed to get. He stresses this particular point, which I wanted to bring because I think it's one of the fundamental flaws of our hearing, because we're hearing, all kinds of stuff. especially during Srimad Bhagavatam lecture. And it's not krama shuddha, it doesn't give you the proper sequence. And he stresses this point. He says that the experience of rasa while hearing the leelas of Krishna can only take place if you hear it. And of course, Prabhupada says this, you have to hear Srimad Bhagavatam from beginning to end in a very systematic way. Unfortunately, our hearing of Srimad Bhagavatam, when we chant just one verse a day, cannot be called systematic because, while reading the third verse, you already don't remember the verse which was there 2 days back. So there is no sequence. He stresses this particular point that especially when you come to this 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, you have to hear Leelas of Krishna in particular order so that the secret of the Leela will be revealed in your heart. And only then you will get this emotional experience. But anyway, just to finish this lecture, just want to say that even if we at least get this understanding that he developed complete faith in Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu, going through some doubts in his mind, going through very significant struggle, internal struggle with this, and when he finally dedicated his complete life to spreading the mission of Caitanya Mahaprabhu, he was completely fixed in this because he knew that this is the solution. This is the most perfect teachings which is there. And if we at least get this point, that would be good because we all need this. We all need this conviction. This is the solution for all the problems of humanity. And there is no problem which could not be solved by the teachings of Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu. And then the desire to spread this teaching will also become very strong in our consciousness and will manifest in wonderful ways, as it was strongly received from Bhaktivinoda Thakur by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati and later on by Abhay Charanaravinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, who brought these teachings to us. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Yes.
Hare Krishna. Sorry for being so aggressive, but I really wanted to ask this question. So in the beginning of the class, you were talking about the importance of having a personal relationship with the between spiritual master and disciple, and in order to get the mood, the emotion of the guru, and that the mood of the person isn't necessarily attained by reading his books. So I was thinking about this in relation to Srila Prabhupada, because Srila Prabhupada gave us an extensive set of teachings, so many books. But when we hear from Prabhupada, and sometimes in his books, the way he writes, the practice of Krishna consciousness can come across as being something very rigid, very hard, austere, exclusive. But when we hear from Prabhupada's disciples, who had intimate association with Prabhupada for a long time, Prabhupada's mood was very different. It was very inclusive. It was very soft. I mean, just as an example, I was thinking of in Prabhupada's purports, there are some statements which can be very discouraging for women. Yet, when I was in London, Malati and Vishaka Prabhus came and they did a presentation about Srila Prabhupada's own mood and the way he personally dealt with his female disciples, and it was so different from what's there in his books. He was so encouraging, he was so kind, he was compassionate, he was bringing them closer. And so my question is, when the disciples of Prabhupada are no longer with us, as our movement goes into the future, and there's no one who has had that personal association with Prabhupada, no one who's really personally felt his mood and his way of personally living the teachings, then how can we perpetuate Prabhupada's mood within ISKCON?
Besides, of course, books which describe Srila Prabhupada's mood, memories about Srila Prabhupada. Besides that, what my answer to this is will be like this. Philosophy has to be sometimes little black and white, has to be somewhat stern, but always there is a culture which is going side by side with the philosophy. And when we, for example, look in the Vedic society, we can see very austere sort of philosophy, and at the same time very nice and soft personal relationship. So what we are lacking in our society, we are lacking this culture, which is primarily the culture of personal relationship and personal interaction between the people. So, in my humble opinion, this real mood or the teachings of Srila Prabhupada can only be transferred further if, together with the teachings, there will be accompanied to these teachings, there will be an example of close and gentle, loving personal relationship between the devotees. That's the culture of interaction, the culture of personal relationship. If we only try to transmit the teachings without this culture, it may create some disasters, and I've seen how it did create disasters in people's life. But if together with this teaching we are transmitting this culture of relationship, loving relationship between the devotees, service and the humble mood, then we are really doing service to Srila Prabhupada and really transmitting further what he brought to us. So, in the books, sometimes it has to be very, how shall I say it, very, very, it has to be presented, the truth has to be presented, but then there is a culture which which has to accompany with the books. And people, when they receive a book from a person who is the embodiment of the teachings which is there in the book, they definitely receive it very gracefully, and it will have an impact on them. Okay. Thank you very much.